welcome. You're watching a new episode of Melt. I'm Ritvika Gupta, shooting from home. In April this year, the MMA, formerly known as Mobile Marketing Association, announced the appointment of Amit Jain, Managing Director, L'Oreal India, as chairperson of its India Board of Directors. Comprising over 800 member companies globally and 15 regional offices, the MMA is the only marketing trade association that brings together the full ecosystem of marketers, tech providers, and sellers working collaboratively to architect the future of marketing. To know more, Anant Rangaswami will be in conversation today with Amit Jain about his vision for the MMA and more. Let's get ready to melt with Amit Jain.
Morning, Amit.
Hey, Anand. Pleasure to be on your show.
Wonderful to have you here. So to begin with, Amit, tell me, why is MMA required at all, in your opinion?
You immediately come down to what matters. Absolutely. So I'm repeating the obvious to say that the rate of change which we have witnessed in the last 18 months, landmark being March of 20, has been more than the previous 5 to 10 years put together. It is driven initially by the pandemic, and then the realization that digitization or digital interaction is a major workaround to all the curbs which were set to us in the pandemic. I would like to think we Indians have evolved very, very strongly and quickly in the face of all this change. And that is where marketing has been stood on its head. Yeah. So the classical way we marketeers used to think about consumer journeys, channels, buying behavior has massively changed. As the consumer goes omni-channel, the consumer journeys now have become seamless. They're online, offline. They buy offline, they decide online, or the other way around. And suddenly marketeers are faced with the biggest challenge of their collective careers. And this is where the Modern Marketing Association comes in. Our job is to empower the marketeers of the future in terms of building the capabilities and preparing them for this very, very dynamic behavior of consumers, the evolving channels, go-to markets, ways consumers decide, and how brands engage their consumers.
Right. I've watched the MMA from the time it's been active in India. And one of the wonderful aspects of MMA is that the chairperson is an active chairperson. Normally it's a titular head in many of these industry bodies. So as the chairperson of the MMA currently, what are your focus areas going to be? What are the 3, 4, 5 areas which you want to change or bring about a positive impact, or whatever that might be?
So, the reason for existence of MMA is to be in service with the modern marketeers. So that's our vision, which is bringing modern marketing techniques. And as the newly appointed chairman of the body in India, my job is to make sure that MMA does a great job of delivering on its promise to its members and the marketing community at large. So to be perfectly honest with you, there are no tectonic changes which I'm bringing about in the few months which I've been around at MMA, precisely because I think our CEO, Monica, and the board of MMA have done a top job in terms of identifying what the priorities are for actually enabling and empowering our marketeers and bringing in best practices. And some of the pillars which MMA has picked up are very, very obvious as we look at what is the evolution happening. The biggest pillar which we have picked up is marketing technology. Embedded within that is, digital and all kinds of data measurements. The other big piece is commerce, and I'm careful when I say e-commerce because it's not just e-commerce. There's also social commerce and voice-led commerce, etc. The third big area is no surprises, voice. not just in the areas of commerce, but in terms of consumer engagement, search, etc. The fourth is brand safety. And the fifth is, of course, for any marketing fraternity, it's inevitable, which is creativity.
Right. So tell me, if we move away from your MMA hat to your L'Oreal hat, what are the areas of this modern marketing that you're describing, which you, in your L'Oreal hat, are embracing?
MMA has been doing a couple of very seminal studies in terms of first creating the awareness for the marketeers in terms of what are the big opportunity areas. Yeah. And these opportunity areas are, for example, in terms of evolution of marketing capability and being a best-in-class marketing organization. So for us, what is initially, as we look at it, what's very attractive from a L'Oreal point of view is the work which has been done in thinking through what is the appropriate marketing organization of the future. Yeah, what creates a high-performing marketing organization, and where is the value created by marketeers in this evolving scenario. So, for example, MMA has done some very good work, which coincidentally was published in the Harvard Business Review. They did a survey around 500 organizations to figure out what highly capable marketing organizations do, right? And this is around building customer centricity in marketeers through building in exchange value and engagement value and enablement of consumers. These are three big centerpieces of the study over there. And we found that to be very appropriate as our marketeers tend to answer the big questions in terms of how their organizations need to evolve. And very importantly, what are the critical capabilities which they need to build?
Right. So, you brought up the post-pandemic world, and the impacts of the post-pandemic world. One of the fascinating changes I've seen is the performance of FMCG brands in this post-pandemic world on e-commerce, social commerce, and so on. So tell me, what is the role that mobile plays, mobile and digital and modern marketing, as you pointed out, in this whole post-pandemic world in the context of FMCG brands?
See, the answers, Anant, are always embedded in consumer behavior and need.
Right.
So what we have seen out there in the environment is the fact that consumers have dramatically reprioritized their spending patterns. So on one hand, we are seeing a serious category shift as consumers allocate more money for food, health, wellness within FMCG, and for inevitable reasons, deprioritize going out, eating out, holidays, leisure. So you see a major category shift. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, of course, is channel behavior, right? So the traditional go-to markets have been challenged by the consumer who either is shopping online. There's still not huge numbers from an Indian context, but it is a runaway trend where a lot of the FMCG categories now are seeing double-digit sales coming out of online commerce, whether it is e-commerce or social commerce or conversation commerce. And the third bit of it, the most important part of it, is the evolving consumer journey, where consumers, as I mentioned earlier, are describing a complete omni-channel behavior in terms of flitting between online and offline. They might decide online and shop offline, or the other way around. Now, what MMA does in this is give a set of playbooks and toolkits to marketeers to decipher this and engage consumers in this. So we've got now a playbook for marketing technology. We've got a playbook for voice. Very recently, along with E&Y, we did a wonderful survey around data and analytics and the data maturity of organizations. So these are the kind of tools which we at MMA are using to empower marketeers with the dramatic change in consumer behavior in terms of how they prioritize categories, how they decide, and how they are interacting with the brands.
Right. So tell me, do we need retraining, reskilling of entire marketing forces, marketing teams across categories? Because they are brought up perhaps comfortable in the old structures of marketing, and now you have a modern marketing sort of behavior change by the consumer. Therefore, the companies have to change. Do we need reskilling and retraining of a lot of marketing forces in this country?
It is inevitable, Anand. And, it is predicated in the fact that our customers are behaving differently, and we have to follow our customers. Marketing, if it remains true to its adage of creating value for critical stakeholders, the consumers, the customers, the channel partners, has no option now to create a dramatically different set of skill sets in terms of dealing with this. The good news is that there are some sectors in the industry which have taken the lead on this, and there is an opportunity for some of us laggards to learn from them. For example, BFSI has, they are clearly ahead of the curve in terms of their marketing maturity with the evolution of the landscape. Needless to say, the mobile companies and the big tech platforms, they are cutting edge. Now, the good news is we at MMA are blessed with a wonderful set of members who are representing these constituent stakeholders which I'm talking about. So we've got a wonderful ecosystem of these cutting edge tech platforms, of BFSI industry, of agencies, both digital as well as research, and of course, then the brand owners. So this really, creates virtuosity. Our ability to learn on the MMA platform from each other, given the sheer diversity of stakeholders, some of them who represent the future, and some of us, laggards, FMCG clearly has a lot of catching up to do, learning from the best. So we do have a brilliant platform to create the future for Indian marketing.
Amit, tell me, one of the wonderful sort of new things I've seen is new distribution channels open for a lot of FMCG companies. For example, during the pandemic, you saw obviously e-commerce becoming very big, but you also saw stuff like chocolates being available in pharmacies across the country. Mm-hmm. A lot of your products were available in pharmacies across the country. Mm-hmm. So are you as a company kind of looking very hard at the distribution landscape and what new opportunities come up, and perhaps what old opportunities need to be junked?
Yeah. A lot of it has been driven by the entire lockdown behavior. So guess what happens when the government allows the essential shops to remain open? So the chemist becomes a general store. So basically, that's what's driven, like you said, chocolates in chemists, which was there in a small way.
And your products.
So our products were always there.
Yeah.
The chemists in India, it's wonderful. Since we don't have a formal pharmacy channel, what the chemists do very well is they do a great job of prescribing. And sometimes I would, hazard a guess that even diagnosing. So literally, you will see somebody saying, go to a chemist and say, "Sar mein dard ho raha," and they will literally prescribe. So the chemists in India are experts of certain categories and not just medicines. So the reason why L'Oreal products do very well over there is, we have products with address big problems. So there's a problem solution. So for example, our categories like hair color, and skin care, which address significant consumer needs, the chemists do a very good job of interpreting which are the appropriate products for consumers. I've really heard chemists saying, "Acha, inka to 4 number rang chalega." That is how good some of them are. So now many other categories are figuring out the beauty of the chemist channel. And if you see the latest quarterly result meetings, some of the organizations have come out talking about a big focus on this one channel. But it's not just about traditional channels, Anand. What's really interesting is the emergence of completely new channels. For example, hyperlocal, which is when all the shops were shut down, some of these food delivery companies or just pure tech-enabled delivery platforms, they filled in the gap. So there are a bunch of categories which have figured out that it's not just food which can be delivered home, but there are many other categories. So for example, at L'Oreal, we have really benefited from that because there has been very, very strong uptake of loyal consumers who could not access their brands going in for hyperlocal deliveries. The third thing which has really been driven by the big change is the whole area of social commerce. Yeah. So now you've got a bunch of entrepreneurs who are using online simple things like WhatsApp, Facebook to engage with consumers. And sometimes it's around influencing and order booking. Sometimes it goes all the way into fulfillment and delivery. So what we are seeing is significant shifts in the go-to market, not just the role of established channels, but the emergence of new channels as well.
One of the biggest challenges for marketers like you or for marketing companies like you is to keep track of all the behavior changes in the consumer and trying to figure out what is short-term change and what is long-term and permanent change. So how do you keep track of what is happening? For example, let us say, will this hyperlocal channel be a channel 1 year from now? And so on.
So in all honesty, we are not crystal ball gazers.
Sure.
Ultimately, MMA is a capability builder. We empower people to deal with emerging trends, but we are not necessarily positioning ourselves as the clairvoyants of the future. So I can give you my personal point of view over here, which is a lot of the evolution which we are seeing is irreversible in terms of consumer behavior. Why? Because the consumer has figured out that there is much more convenience in the way they have altered some of their buying behavior. And it is, ultimately the best harbinger of the future is where the money flows. And we know, for example, UPI transactions, I think financial year 21 topped 22 billion. Yeah. So India is among the biggest, markets when it comes to digital payments, which obviously is a surrogate for the fact that at a lot of consumer behaviors, not just in products, but in services, the way we talk to our doctors, get online diagnosis, and I can give you 5 other examples. So this is change which is driven by productivity, by convenience, and obviously by safety. And I would think that we are going to see this evolution continue for quite a long while.
Right. Like I said, I've been associated with MMA in some form or the other from the time it started in India. And one of the wonderful parts of the MMA was the annual board meeting, where the chairperson and the entire board would meet physically. Now, probably you wouldn't have met your core board members in a physical environment. Do you think that is permanent change, not meeting physically and carrying on meeting virtually like you and I are doing today?
Ultimately, there is a basic human need. We humans are social animals, and we need to meet informally. We need to exchange ideas and give and take energy from each other. So I do not believe that the digital medium is going to be a permanent substitute for any of that. What we are going to see is a hybrid future. in the interest of convenience, productivity, efficiency, some of our interactions will become permanently digital, but I'm confident that as and when the situation allows it, we would want to, meet on a personal level as well. So that's something I really look forward to doing. I'm on a couple of other boards where the boards are having exactly these discussions, saying, okay, for the last 4 or 5 quarters, we've been meeting digitally, but we really look forward to also having an in-person board meeting. So it's a fundamental human need that's not going to go away, which translates in itself also, apart from boards, is in terms of how we work. And you must have, seen a lot of announcements of organizations now going for a hybrid way of working, etc., recognizing the fact that employees, whether they're board members or not, they need to interact, they need to exchange and, give and take energy.
Right. So, and last question is a L'Oreal question more than an MMA question. So tell me, by say 2025, what percentage of your sales will come through modern marketing or modern channels, not quite modern marketing? I mean, if you could just take a punt, I know you're not a clairvoyant, I know you don't want to do crystal ball gazing, but to get a sense. And maybe you can answer it in the form of what percentage of your media spends will go digital and how much will remain traditional and so on.
Mm-hmm. So, Anand, this is pretty much in the public domain.
Right.
L'Oreal globally has positioned itself as a beauty tech company, which is pretty much describing how the future of consumer engagement is going to work. So more than the channels, we are very clear that the majority of our consumer engagement in the future is going to be interactive in nature, which means obviously digital media over a period of time will actually overtake traditional media, to give you one part of it. And this is much more because consumers today seek interactivity, they seek intimacy with the brands there. And once you engage them in that kind of an idiom, they become among the best ambassadors for our brands. That's what we are realizing. Recently L'Oreal globally declared its 6 monthly results, what we call semester 1. And our brands have picked up market shares globally across all major segments, which is driven by this commitment of engaging consumers digitally in an interactive fashion, because that's what really builds engagement and brand intimacy. So we see that future playing itself out more and more in times to come.
So while you want to engage with your consumer digitally, I hope in your avatar as L'Oreal and as MMA, you and I catch up soon, physically and not virtually. And thank you so much for this conversation.
Anand, thanks for the very insightful questions, and I hope you got the responses which interests your viewers. So it's been a pleasure talking to you.
And that was Amit Jain sharing how the MMA aims to empower marketers of the future. He is presenting the Melt cheat sheet. Consumers are observing omni-channel behavior and have reprioritized spending patterns. Brands and retailers are experimenting with new platforms and broadening their channels. Some of the changes in customer behavior appear to be irreversible in the long run. And that's a wrap on this episode of Melt. You can follow us on social media. Our handle is Ready to Melt. And stay updated with all that's happening in the world of advertising and marketing with our daily Melt update on our website, readytomelt.com. I shall see you next week. Goodbye.